Many people throughout history and even today have used the Bible to relegate women to a subservient and diminished role in our culture and society. However, upon reading the Bible, both in the Old and New Testament, we see that women served an equally significant role in God's plan and salvation. One story that highlights this is the story of Mary Magdalene when she comes to the tomb after Jesus has risen from the dead. And we can find this in John chapter 20, and I'll be focusing on verses 1 through 18. But John chapter 20 talks about the resurrection of Jesus Christ and how he appears to the disciples. So here's the gist of the story. So Jesus has risen from the dead, and Mary Magdalene is the first one on the scene. She is the first one at the tomb. So she comes to the tomb and she looks and she sees that Jesus is not there. And once she recognizes that Jesus is not there, she runs back to the disciples and she tells them, hey, tomb is open, Jesus is not there. The Bible says that Peter and the disciple that Jesus loved, which is John, they run to the tomb. And John is the disciple that Jesus loved. He runs and he beats Peter to the tomb. The disciple that Jesus loved, he goes in, he sees the linen folded up, and the Bible says that he believes. And then Peter, he goes in afterwards and he sees everything. And you know, the words that the Bible uses, it said Peter sees, but he's thinking, he's processing it. And then after they finish, what happens is they return back home. Now, Mary comes back with them as they run back to the tomb, and she's there by herself. And the Bible says that she goes in again, or as she's there crying, she looks into the tomb again, and she sees two angels. And the angels ask her who she's looking for. And she said, I'm looking for my Lord. Where have they taken his body? And then Jesus appears behind her and asks her the same thing. He says, who are you? He says, why are you crying? He asked her two questions. Why are you crying, and who are you looking for? And she turns, but she doesn't recognize it as Jesus. She thinks that he's the gardener. And she was like, I want to know where they took the body of my Lord. And then when he calls her name, he says, Mary. She immediately recognizes this as Jesus. And the Bible says that in Aramaic, she says Rabboni, which means teacher. And then Jesus goes on to have a discussion. He says, Mary, you can't touch me right now, because he says, do not cling to me. I have not yet ascended to my Father. And that, that's a whole nother story. It's a lot to unpack there. But my point is that we see here that in the Bible, Mary Magdalene was the first person to, in a sense, preach the gospel that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. And the reason why that's significant is because we see here that women, this is a significant role, and questions come up, right? Questions come up like, why not choose a man, right? Why not choose one of the leading disciples? Why not choose one of the intimate three, Peter, James, and John? This was kind of Jesus's inner circle of the circle that he had, right? His three amongst the 12 that had he was more connected with, or at least they were the ones who saw him transfigure himself, saw him in his full glory on the Mount of Transfiguration. A couple things that you have to understand about women's position in Bible days. So one, it was a patriarchal society, a society kind of designed for men. And both in Roman and Jewish courts, women's testimony was inadmissible. They couldn't even testify in Roman and Jewish courts. And then also Mary Magdalene herself, she was an outcast. She was a pariah. But we see here that Jesus allowed her to be the one to see him first. To see him risen. He allowed her to be the first one to go and to tell the disciples. And I think that that's significant. And I think that we see that God in the Bible uses women, and women are equally significant in the role of God's plan throughout history and in his role in the gospel and for the plan of salvation. And I think that's encouraging. It's encouraging to me, and it should be encouraging to us all, because we all are, in a sense, weak like Mary Magdalene. We all, or at least we should all see ourselves in her position. None of us, he does not, the Bible says that he doesn't choose the strong and the leaders, but he says he chooses the weak to confound the strong. He chooses the foolish things. And here we see that in play. And it's significant because it's a woman. And since it was a patriarchal society, another key point is that many historians, Bible historians, will tell you that if Christianity was something that was made up, if it was a made up religion, this is something that the writers would not do because of the role that women were relegated to in that type of society. Their testimony was inadmissible in Jewish court. They were seen as inferior. So why would the writers put this in here and allow a woman to be the first one to share the gospel? But Christ, he appeared to her. He allowed her to be the first one to see that he was risen, and he was patient with her and gentle with her because she had yet to believe even after she saw the empty tomb. And a lot of the disciples were like that. They had to come in their own time to accept the fact that Christ did rise from the dead. So one, we see in this particular passage that women served a significantly or an equally significant role in God's plan to bring salvation to the world. So I hope this video was insightful, and I would encourage you to go back and read John chapter 20 verses 1 through 18. And I'm sure that as you read it, as you study it, you will get more insights and more nuggets upon reading it. I'll see you next time.